Welcome, everyone, to Stepping Into Your Leadership. I'm your host, Christine Courtney. Our goal here is to give you some actionable takeaways that will help you lead your teams. Thanks for joining us on this leadership journey. Let's get started. Hello, welcome, everyone. We're here in the leadership studio today with, yet again, the infamous Tom Armstrong joining us today. Hello, Tom.
Hi, Christine. Infamous. That's good to know.
Back by popular demand. I get a lot of notes, a lot of thoughts from my mom on how much she likes you. So Here you are.
My mom's not chiming in
well, not to me, not to
okay.
me. That's who I get the most notes from, my mom. But anyway, welcome back. Tom is here because we are talking today about how to grow a very robust leadership bench, or some people call it a leadership pipeline, whatever is going to basically help you to retain really good people and move them up for opportunities, promotion, succession, and keep your company really fertile with a lot of great leaders and managers and so forth. And so we're going to talk about that today. And I invited Tom because Tom does a lot of this for us, especially because he manages a lot of early stage employees for us and really starts to identify which of those folks kind of starts to move up that leadership ladder. And so I thought it would be good to have his viewpoint on this. And he gets a lot of good feedback from it as well from our staff. So anyway, welcome, Tom.
Hi. It's fun. Really excited.
It is fun. It's fun to talk about, promoting instead of being here for difficult conversations. We're actually talking about the good ones today, right?
Yeah.
If you're out there running your company and wondering, why can I not keep people? Why are the people that I have not ready for the next level of leadership? Or if you're somebody who's like, I need to move up in my company, how do I make that happen? Today's a great episode for you. Let's jump in with why. Like, why is this important to look at intentionally? Some people think, it just happens organically in my office. And whenever I dig into that, there's what we think is magic tends to have a lot of method behind it. And when you start to really dig down, there's things that they're doing that they might not even realize that are helping them. And vice versa, if you don't have luck with this in your organization and you always feel like you're not able to retain people, you're not able to move them up to the next position, or you're having to bring in from the outside too often, it might be that there's a few things that you could do. So in this episode, we're going to talk about why it's important to do it, how it can save you money, time, energy, and frustration, and then also some tips on how you can get better at it. So you ready?
Yeah.
All right, Tom. So why should people do it? Why is it important for an organization?
For us, I can say I love that it's a priority of ours to hire from within and to have our succession be from within. One advantage for this is that you know your team, you know their strengths, you know their weaknesses. Things can be predictable in that sense. And when you hire someone from the outside, it's really like, what are you going on? A resume and a few interviews. Interviews are super ineffective. You're only going to see the person's best in an interview. They can weed out some things where you're like, okay, that's an obvious red flag. That's helpful. But they can't always predict who's going to be great at the job. But someone's performance over time is a great indicator. Right. So, that's a great benefit of it. If there's a role to fill, hiring from within, I just really love it for that reason, because it makes things a little more predictable. Another is that for the team, our team knows it's very rare for us to hire from the outside. That means there's a path for me in this organization. I'm less likely to look outside when I know that the path exists internally. And if I love the culture, I love the people, I want to grow in that company. If I see them always hiring outside, I'm like, where's the path for me? I'm more likely to go find work elsewhere. So I think it's good for retention in that way too.
Yeah, so true. And both, just so everybody out there knows, both Tom and I started at our organization at the leadership program as an entry level person, right? Part-time facilitator, and really over the years worked our way up. And that is the story of how we like to do things for the reasons that Tom says, and also a few more that we haven't hit on quite yet, but we will, in the sense that it's, one is that you immediately, I love what you said, Tom, about how you can see people's performance over time. And that is more of an indicator than anything else, right? And that people will stick with you if they see that all of these people within the organization have moved up in that company, so that they believe that's possible. But it's also just makes dollars and cents also, because it costs, the Society for Human Resource Management, SHRM, says that the average cost, and I think this has gone up in the recent years, but it's over $4,000 and around 42 days or something to hire out for a new position, right? So if you also, the higher up you go, the more that cost is, right? But if you're costing that much for every new person, especially in our case, every part-time person, that adds up very quickly, right? The other thing is that I thought was interesting is that at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, they found that external hires are often paid 18 to 20% more than internal employees in the same positions, right? Yet they receive significantly lower performance evaluations, and in their first years on the job have higher exit rates. So the chances are that if you hire somebody within, one, you're not going to have to pay as much to outside organizations to get that person. You're probably not going to have to pay as much as you would have to pay for someone to get in. But also, the research is showing that they are not performing at any higher rates, and they actually are leaving your company also at faster rates. So if you can build up people within your organization, grow them, give them promotions, give them raises, of course, but you're not going to have to do it at the extremities that you have to do when you're always bringing in people from the outside. The other thing about building people up within is that you're building your culture. So you're not having to start your culture over again with every new person that's coming in, bringing where they've been with them. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes you need that, right? So I'm not saying you never need that. We've done it also, especially in particular jobs where you're like, for us, it's finance. We're not people that generally tends to move up folks into finance roles. So we generally take those folks from the outside, but not always, right? Some people move up within. But really what you're looking at is like, how can you keep that culture going? And if you have your leaders started in the company years ago, they've been marinating in that culture for years. So it's already going to be stronger without you having to actually even do that much. So
also, Christine, the relationships are like so much of what we do is built on the strength of our relationships with our team and the institutional knowledge that comes with that longevity and the speed of trust, like Stephen Covey's Speed of Trust piece. It is Covey, right? Speed of Trust.
Yep. Well, yes, it's Sean Covey. It's his son.
Sean, yeah, Sean. That things move a lot quicker when there's trust built over time. When you break trust, things move a lot slower. And a new hire, they don't know to trust me. I don't know to trust them yet. And things move so much quicker with someone who you've built up that relationship over time if you're following some of the guidance that you give in your other podcasts about relationship building.
I love that. You're so right, because, we just had a staff meeting yesterday and we asked people, we went through the past 10 years of being in this office that we've been in of like memories. And most people were remembering when people's kids were born or when specific, when someone's mom died or whatever happened in those years also solidified what happened with work, when we got a new big contract or whatever. But a lot of it was like, oh, I remember that because that's when so-and-so was born. And I thought, well, that's pretty remarkable that we all have that shared life experience with each other. And what's great about that is that it makes it a strong place to work, but also people don't want to leave as much because you're now leaving your friends. I won't say family because, that triggers a lot of people, but I would say that you're leaving like kind of deeper friendships and stuff. And so that's something that I love that, where you can build that trust over time and not have to start over. How great, right?
Yeah.
All right. So let's jump into how to do this, because I think that the feedback that I get from people is that this is difficult when you don't have something started. So what do you think are some ways to help people do this?
Christine, one thing that I also find is part of this is reminding people that this might be something that not all companies go through. A particular model that we have, this is true, that we have people on the front line, super effective. I think it's going to be very common. It could be I could see this happening in tech a lot. People maybe they're an incredible coder, and they're also seem to be having some natural leadership capabilities and stuff, building the relationships with their team. They influence people. You can see all that. Great potential for growth. And their manager is like, no, if you take them out, our productivity is going to drop because they're twice as fast as the person next to them. So you don't want to punish people for being effective at what they're great at. I forget what off the top of my head, I don't remember what the law is or whatever it is, but there's a term for this thing where you're usually not good at what you do because you get progressed into the thing that you don't know how to do.
The Peter principle.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
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 So people are afraid of this, but it's actually, I'm like, embrace it. There's a discomfort in that process. I know I'm taking out some of my best performers. I know that my idea is, 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, you will move out of that position and grow in the company and suddenly become less effective for a while. So it's my job now to be thinking that 6 months out, 1 year out, so that I can grow. But I have to remind their managers, this is always going to happen. It's good that it happens. You have your job because it happened. I have my job because this happened.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is that my boss will eventually grow out of her role. And maybe then there will be a position for me if I've earned it. And knowing that creates more of meritocracy in the organization. So again, we're still talking about the reasons why, I guess, but
it's true. That's important.
There's a tactic here, which is remember to tell your team, remind them, your top performers, it's important. I know who they are. Sometimes they can almost start to want to hide their, because it's like,
hide their genius.
Don't want to lose them.
It's so true.
Because they're tied to that person's performance indicators. That manager might be the best at their job because they have the best people under them.
Mm-hmm.
And now they become the pipeline for succession. And that person that's so good under them is now going to become their colleague. That can be threatening. So it's like, keeping that in the culture and reminding people the importance and the value of it.
Yeah.
It's a big part of my job, actually.
That's a really good point. I think the other thing that you reminded me selfishly also to that point, you have to not only remind their colleagues, you have to remind your clients, because sometimes we don't want to pull people out of those positions because they maybe are key in that relationship with that client. But I've had to have a number of conversations with clients where I say, listen, I know you love, let's call him Bill. I know you love Bill, but I love Bill too. And if we don't let Bill get promoted, Bill's going to leave us anyway. So let him still be in the organization, support the new person that's coming in, and be absolutely invested in this new person's growth so that person can be just as good as Bill, but in their way. And then they kind of get this moment of like, oh, right. Because it is true. If you leave good people in the same position for a long time, you cannot be surprised if they leave. Yeah. So don't hide them under that rock that you think you're hiding them under that rock, and you're not, because good people do rise to the top and people see it everywhere. The other thing is knowledge transfer. So I know, because Tom has done all of the jobs right underneath him, so to speak, in the progression of our leadership pipeline. When somebody is sick, maternity leave, there's a crisis, guess who can fill in?
Yeah.
Tom. So I can sleep better as leader because I know that if something goes wrong in the front lines, there are a lot of people above that know how to do that work and can fill in, and we're not going to have this big gaping hole. They also know how to train people on all those jobs because they've done them. And they know how to give advice when there's problems come up. I mean, this morning we were waiting to start this podcast and Tom was getting 5 calls from people out in the field with things going on. And he knows how to do it because he's been there. There's experience. It's not somebody from the outside going, oh, well, I know my own way, but I don't know how they do it here at this company. Or, so there is that part that can be really valuable. So,
and then every time also there's a really challenging moment for one of my directs and they're going through something that's especially psychologically hard, just stressful, a situation they're trying to resolve, and it might be the first time they're dealing with it. I'm like, just remember, this is giving you the story that you need to be able to use to coach the next person that has this problem. As you grow in the company, you will use this. Like, I think you turned me on to this idea of the laboratory, using it as a lab. So you could take it a little less personally and you go, oh, okay, this is actually helping me with mastery so I can become a stronger leader. And it's actually a great framing. I remind myself of that when I'm going through hard stuff at work,
Yeah, it's true. It's going to be a good story. It's true. It's good. We call it, we have one of our core values is lead, learn, and lead again. So you're going to get out there. When you're leading, things are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. Things are going to happen to you, things you're going to create, all those things. And then it's time to learn, step back, learn from it, and then get out there and lead again. And I think that's a great lesson, because then that person, presumably, if you're creating a really strong bench, really strong pipeline, those people are learning these lessons along the way and then passing this corporate folklore down to everybody as it goes, right? That storytelling of pains, of lessons learned, helps to ease people as they learn things in their own way too. It also helps change how you do stuff. If you're moving people up all the time, they know where all the kinks are in your systems. They know, oh, right, there's some problems with how we do this. You need to let's make this better when you get into a position of more power to be able to affect more change. So I think there's lots of reasons for it. It also looks really good from the outside when you have people who have been there for a long time and you can show how you do this in your organization, how you have more diversity and inclusion, even just from that idea of an environment that is moving people up from an entry level position all the way to the C-suite in some cases, is a really good story to be able to tell as well. Clients like to hear it, vendors like to hear it, customers like to hear it, and certainly your staff likes to hear it. Yeah. All right. So now, how do you get better at it? And you can reverse engineer this as you're listening to think, how can I get better at doing this for myself if I don't feel like my company does this well, right? There's ways that you can advocate for yourself as well through this process. But also for those of you out there in HR or in running teams or running companies, this is a great way to look at, like, how do I assess how we do and how do I make it better? So what do you think, Tom? What's something that people can do to improve this?
In terms of behaviors, like specific behaviors you can do, one would be, something that I just keep in mind when I'm doing my one-on-ones. Ideally, everybody's doing their one-on-ones, is that there's a point in your one-on-ones where you're looking out for the moments when you can plug this into this. Like you're giving them guidance that's going to connect to them being able to do your job in the future. And when I say in the future, I mean, maybe not even your job now, but what's going to be the competency needed in your job in a year, because if you're only thinking about what your role is now, this is next level, but you have to also be thinking about what competencies you yourself need for your job in the future and thinking about that as well for your team. So it's like, how do I delegate? What roles can I give? That push work down thing where I'm being intentional about increasing the workload of the person below me by giving them the items that are easier for me to do now. This could be harder for them. So I'm doing that. Usually I'm trying to find that during my one-on-ones. So I'm getting little clues from them about the stuff they're going through, especially if they're sharing these difficult stories. And then I'll find a task or something where I can say, oh, here's something that I think would be good for you to work on so that you could develop this competency, because it's going to be important to grow in this company to be able to do this.
Yeah, that's great. And you can really notice if you're having those kinds of discussions that I know Tom has in his one-on-ones, and hopefully you guys are having out there too. You're also seeing who is a problem solver by nature, right? And that's really what you want as you start to get into people managing and leading, is how good are they at problem solving? Because that's really where you're paying people. You're paying people for their ability to problem solve and to get better at that as they go. And one thing you can tell, if you're the one in those one-on-ones always solving the problems and telling them what to do, you're never going to know if they're good at it, right? Yeah. It's like with kids. So like in some ways you've really got to, at a certain point, start to back off and ask them, what would they do about this? Put the questions back to them to start really developing their problem solving skills. And that will make a big difference, I think, in who you start to identify can move up, because nobody likes to promote somebody who never knows what to do and has to go to you for everything. It doesn't mean you don't ask for advice, but it certainly means that you come to the table with some ideas.
I think even in addition to that, yes, and to that would be, and I think this is also connected to situational leadership, that concept that once someone attains a certain level of mastery in their position and in their role, that the kind of guidance you're giving them changes, and you start to lean a little bit more into actually going to them for advice yourself as their manager. Say, I have a situation, how would you manage this? And it's such a huge compliment to hear that from your boss. Like you feel so like, oh, the value that you feel is much like you feel the role. It's not, there's no loss of face for the manager. They're just saying, here's a situation. I'm curious what your thoughts are on it. What would you, any advice you give me about how to resolve this problem? And you're learning so much about their processes, and you're probably getting great advice as well. So it's just a really healthy practice. You don't want to do that to someone who's fairly new to a role, because they're going to be like, what? How am I supposed to know?
Yeah.
So it really, you have to wait till they have expertise.
That's true. You have to wait. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have to wait a little bit. That's a good point. The other thing you're looking at besides those problem solving abilities is I always think, how curious is this person and how much initiative do they take? Because those two qualities of curiosity and initiative equal the ability to handle change. And I think that initiative and curiosity create people who can handle change. And what happens in a daily, weekly, monthly, yearly basis in today's work world is change on some capacity, and if you're stuck in why does everything have to change for too long, and you're not able to get curious about it or take initiative and how to make something better, that's going to be a hard person down the line to be a leader. And so I think there's things that we identify in people and we don't know why. We just think, oh, I like this person or they're good. But I think you have to really clue in as a leader of why? What are those qualities that they have that make them good? Because that's what I'm going to start looking for in how I'm developing this bench. So whatever is your values, are they a good listener? Because you don't want to keep promoting people that are just good at talking. Are they good listeners? What is it about your company, the culture of your company that you want to develop? Because take that person, and the more leadership you give them, the more power they have, their qualities are going to be doubled and tripled in some cases in your organization. Yeah. So you really want to be discerning in those qualities.
I think part of what you're describing is managing your own biases. So I will have a natural tendency, because I'm a human being, to a charismatic leader. And charismatic leaders, because they're just very influential, they have these characteristics that trigger certain responses where you just listen, and they somehow their ideas seem to have merit, even if it's a terrible idea, just because they're super charismatic and confident. And the problem with charisma, confidence is important as a leader, but the problem with confidence and charisma is being your characteristic that makes you a great leader. And I've had those leaders and I love to follow them, but the problem is that they can't really effectively then coach. It's a lot harder to coach those behaviors. I want to be able to be very meta with my team and say, not only I'm identifying the behaviors that they have that would make them a strong leader, but I'm saying these are the behaviors, these are the things that I'm doing that I would want you to replicate in my role. This is how you do my role. It's not just, I'm not leading because I'm super charismatic or as magic. I'm there's leaders I've had where I'm it almost seems magical. How do they do it? Everybody just loves them. That's great while they're there, but there's no succession for that. It's they leave and the charisma goes with them. But someone who's really great at saying, this is the system that works. These are the behaviors that work. You can learn how to do that, and then can step out of the way and someone else can then do that and put their own stamp on it. That's way more valuable. And that can be the quieter person, to your point, who listens. The person who's a little more humble, the person who's in service but less seen, if they just know the tools that you're using. So I think it's also a great practice for managers to be very meta and explaining, this is why I do these things with you as your manager, is for these reasons. Even about why it's so important for me to build relationships in my one-on-ones. That's not a manipulation. It's a thing that I am doing it as a practical reason to get results for my team. It's part of my job. I do it also because it's great. Mm-hmm. It's fun, but so they're aware of that. Oh, that's a thing that we do in the organization. I should be doing that with my team too.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, I have another one. For anybody, when you're talking about creating a leadership bench, many people think about starting way too late. You have to start way early. You have to start from the very beginning. And I think that part of that is, can you allow people to use their strengths at work, preferably every day in some capacity, maybe even only 10 to 20%. Are you recognizing what their strengths are? Are you recognizing the things they love to do? And is there a way for them to do them at work in some capacity. So for instance, if you have somebody that works for you and you find out through these one-on-ones, and that's why we always talk about how important the one-on-one is. If you find out that they really love problem solving, are you giving them opportunities to do that in other ways, right? Is it related to necessarily what you do at work? So for instance, Tom here is also in his life very good at the drums and also very good at photography, right? That's a new passion, photography for him relatively. And what we discovered once we knew that was to go, how do we provide opportunities for Tom to merge these things that he loves at work, and how can that help us too, right? So now Tom takes maybe headshots of our staff, or is, doing some activities that in our team buildings that uses photography or uses drumming, or, those things that make him go, wow, I can bring all of myself here. Right? That's like an extra step when you can take some of the things that they're good on the outside, but it makes sense. Tatiana, who works for us, very crafty person. She's very good at like coming up with ideas. She loves to come up with new ideas and she likes to make them happen. Like I would say she likes to build things, and so she will come in with like figuring out new ways to do anything from our swag to the lettering on our elevators to whatever that makes it match our core values, things like that you wouldn't think of, but maybe giving her that opportunity adds like an extra boost in herself. And she feels that what I have as a person is valuable to this place. So if you can start to recognize that in people, they want to stay there because people like to do what they're good at and what brings them joy and happiness, right? And so I say, look for those strengths early on. And the second thing I would add for early on is attention. And especially if you're working with Gen Zs and some young millennials, this is really, really key. New people in the workforce need more attention than ever. And the way I like to look at it is my daughter, and I said this before, my teenage daughter, made me sign up for Snapchat, and I immediately was overwhelmed by how much of a job Snapchat is, first of all, to keep up with things, and the rules that are implied but not said to an old person like myself is that you have to respond right away. Right? You have to, if someone writes to you, you have to send a picture back of yourself, no matter where you are, no matter what. If you open up their picture and look at it, God forbid you don't send back one right away. What I learned, you're better to not open it if you don't have time to respond to 28 friends of my teenage daughter who are writing, sending me a snap of themselves constantly. But what that tells us about these folks that are going to be in the workforce any minute now, and some of them already are, is they are used to immediate feedback. Immediate attention, immediate positive feedback, immediate like, I see you, I'm here for you. Yes. So if they go in with bosses that do not give any attention, they're like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong? I'm in a vacuum. And I talk to the Gen Xers like you and me, Tom, who are used to being on our own, latchkey kids. We grew up, kind of figuring it out. We're like, why do I need to be that involved? Isn't that rude? Isn't that micromanaging? Shouldn't I leave them alone? Don't they want some space? No, they want attention. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be mini, just like social media is for them. It can be mini, but you need many touches throughout with them. So it doesn't take a lot, but it takes a mind switch, and you can argue it all you want, but just try it. And I swear you're going to start to see change.
Yeah. Christine, there's an analogy that I think connects to this idea of succession. Like you're saying, you have to think really early, think way in advance about this process so that, you're not stuck in a situation where you're like, I have nobody to succeed me. You have to ask yourself, first of all, do I have a successor? And if you don't, start working on it. Someone ready to succeed you now, because you never know. It could be that you grow in the company or something happens, you just step out for a while. Who can do your job? So that should be something ongoing. But, if you're driving on a freeway, it's important not to just look at the car in front of you. You should be looking 2 cars in front of you. If you see the accident happen 2 cars in front of you, you could stop even before the car in front of you begins to notice it. If you're always just looking at the car in front of you or that short window, which I think a lot of drivers do, your risk of problem goes up. Basically, your response time is shorter, and it's kind of an equivalent. You have to always be thinking that, like looking far enough ahead, and it just takes a little more, I guess, effort, especially when you have so much to do in the short term. So the good thing is that the actual solution is built into the problem. You have all these tasks. You should be trying to push the work down so that because that is part of the process of getting your successor is by pushing the work down. So, building out that as you grow in leadership, creating the space for you to be able to make those kinds of choices is really important. And to get there is through that process of delegation. So.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because when someone is in an entry-level job, their future thinking doesn't have to be that wide, right? It can be quite small. But as you promote people, as people move up, right, off the bench into this leadership pipeline as they go, their future thinking has to exponentially grow with them. So the higher you are in the company, I should be, this isn't always the case. I should be, as the person ultimately in charge of the organization, I should spend most of my time on future thinking, right? And then the person right under me spends a lot of, let's say, 75% of their time on future thinking. Then as you go, 50% and 25%, all the way down to the person who is in the field running that exact customer contact. They're thinking mostly about that being great in that day to day. But if you're not helping people to, as you get ready to promote them, you have to start, and this can happen in those one-on-ones, start talking to them about more visionary thinking, more like you said, what's not right in front of you? What's the car 2 in front of you? What's the car 3 in front of you? What's the next road? What's the next state we're in? What's the next universe? Like, all of those things need to be part of your discussion, so that as people, the higher people are up, are you expanding their visionary thinking? Are you starting that process with them? Because oftentimes we think, oh, that person isn't a visionary, I can't promote them. Well, yeah, duh, because you haven't developed that with them. Somebody else on the outside that's coming in maybe got that from wherever they were. But if you start to develop that now with people in every format, like, how much are we talking about this? I realized that recently with one of my pretty high up folks, that we're spending, especially since COVID, this happened, we're spending our time just troubleshooting the day-to-day problems. Troubleshooting the day-to-day problems, troubleshooting people problems, troubleshooting, listening to what she has to say about this. And then at the end of the day, at the end of our meeting, we're like, okay, good meeting. We talked about a lot. But I didn't do anything to develop her for any sort of big picture thinking beyond these day-to-day problems. And so I'm having to shift now to go, wait a minute, COVID is over. Can we get out of just this habit of crisis management and go, how can I intentionally put it in? And sometimes if I was to listen to Tom, who I've learned a lot from in my leadership, is that I cannot expect it just to happen. I have to put it into a format so that I look at the watch and go, you know what, we've got 10 minutes left. Let's talk about what's next. What's next year? What's 5 years from now? Where do you could imagine this organization could be in 10 years? Let's just have let's just wonder about that for a couple of minutes, right? Those are creating habits of thinking. And I think that's really key.
It is a habit, and it's important, not urgent, until it's urgent.
Yes. So explain this. You're going to have to explain this now, because you're using our jargon that we use that people might not have heard us talk about before. So you're going to have to do a quick version of the Eisenhower matrix, Tom, one of your favorite topics.
That's why I brought it up. So the good news is it precedes our organization by a lot of decades. Yeah, Dwight D. Eisenhower, I believe when he became president, was like, I can't figure out what's what. It's just so much to do. I don't know how to prioritize. So he created the Eisenhower matrix, which is basically a quadrant, X and Y axis. Axis 1 is important and urgent. So you can have an item that is low urgency, low importance, high urgency, low importance, high importance, low urgency, and high urgency, high importance. So basically you chart out all of your tasks, and then you put them in each one of those categories. You figure out which one of these quadrants does that live in. And so, for example, a crisis situation is going to be high urgency, high importance. Like, you have to manage that immediately. Yeah. So the thing is, do it. That's the behavior associated with anything in that item or in that quadrant. A very upset client can be that way if it's an important client. And then an example for me of high importance, low urgency is that I really want to get better at Spanish. It's not a work one, but it could be like, I need to be better at PowerPoint or something. I need to have
it could be
a
that
deeper
I need
sense of
to
Excel.
Create a leadership bench. I need to have management training for my staff. I need to take a leadership course, right?
Yeah. So the behavior for the manager or the supervisor in that case is to schedule it. you have to put it in your calendar to do it. You take it out of your to-do list and you actually put it in your calendar. You say, I'm going to do this on this day and time. It's not urgent. Don't have to do it in this moment, but I have to schedule it or it'll never get done. So I would need to schedule in my Spanish classes. In this case, you would need to determine what are the behaviors I need to have in order to make sure I have a successor, and then schedule those behaviors into your calendar, like put them in, or it will remain you will be as good at it as I am at Spanish, which is not great. I can kind of do it, but in a pinch, I mean, it's true. If I was thrown on the street right now in a Spanish, I could sort of do it, but it wouldn't be competency. So if you want to get at that competency level, you have to schedule it in.
Okay. I love it. Yes. And that it's a great point. If you want to look up the Eisenhower Matrix. Stephen Covey made it famous in Habits of Highly Successful People, but it's really powerful. We use it a lot in our leadership training. The other thing is, because we're running out of time here, very quick, some things that you can do is you need to show people visible and attainable paths to promotion. So one of the ways that you can do that is be talking about it. But the other thing is that I think is a good tip. If the people that you have moved up in the organization, assuming that there's one or two at least, have them be able to tell their story at some either all hands meetings or places where people are hearing, oh, this person used to be this. I didn't know that. Right.
Yeah.
I know that when we go into new recruits, so to speak, in our organization, if I come into that room, our HR director always says, oh, Christine used to be in this role. Right. Or Tom used to be in this role. And then they go, oh, wow. Okay, so there's the few of them that might be interested in this someday. Remember that. So visibly
and they
show
even tell
people.
us. They even approach us after that and they say, I heard this. I love this organization. I love the culture. Just want to let you know now I'm interested in growth.
Yeah.
That always means a lot. And those are the people that do. I mean, assuming that they have the qualities. Yeah, they do.
They do grow. So start pinpointing that right away. Offer some management training to people before they're even managers. Because what happens is that then they see, oh, they believe in me. They believe I can do this. And then when they become managers, it's too late. Like they need the training right beforehand. I mean, obviously do it then as well. But it's really, I've seen some companies do this where we go in and they don't even have anybody that directly reports to them yet, but they're learning these things now. It doesn't mean that everything will stick, but it's priming the pump, so to speak, to get them ready, right? The other thing, you told me something yesterday when we were talking, Tom, about what you do to recognize this quality of growing the bench with your staff, right? Do you remember this?
You're going to have to jog my memory, Christine.
I'll tell you.
Tell me what I think.
Tell you how brilliant you were. You were telling me.
I just want to hear it.
You were telling me that you, with a couple of people on your staff that directly report to you that are really good at growing their bench, like underneath you, you pinpoint that for them. It's that old adage of catch people doing something good because they're going to repeat that behavior that you are giving them kudos for. And so you recognize
it becomes their brand.
Becomes their brand. You talk about it. You share it with other people.
Star maker. Yeah. Kingmaker, whatever. Like you give them a name, it's like you queen maker, whatever it is. Sorry. I was just watching a rerun of the Game of Thrones. So that popped in my head, but it's like it's even like it could become part of their identity. Like, oh, this is who I am. This is what I do. I actually create the next stars.
Yeah. And so then you create more of that behavior. The other thing is with your higher up folks, ask them in a way that is non-threatening, like who would take over for you today if you had to put someone in there? That in some places, especially in corporate America, that can be very intimidating for people and they feel like their job is on the line. So you have to figure out the right way to do it. But you want to be having those questions about, like you said, about what is the sustainability of this organization? Who would you put in right now if you were to be able to move up, right? So not if we were to fire you, because that's everybody's fear.
Not everybody wants to grow either. Some people will tell you, like, I'm so happy I've found my competence. Like, I'm really good at what I do. I don't want to mess with that because I spend the time I need with my family. I come to work, I do my job. I'm appreciated for the work I do, and I'm able to go home and do my thing. And others are like, all I want is like, I feel impatient once I get to that level of competency, and I just want the next.
Yeah.
I want to get to that next level. Problem is, you don't always know which of those are actually going to be the best leader. Reluctant leaders are often the best. Yeah,
you don't know. And sometimes it's timing, right? But also if you're worried because people are leaving you too quick, if they're leaving you within that 2-year time frame because they need to have more opportunities, and you say, well, I don't have any more opportunities, like I don't have those jobs, which I hear CEOs tell me all the time, you can do lateral moves. You can move people, you should be having people cross collaborate on projects and so forth. You can give people new opportunities without giving them a totally new job in the old ways that we used to think of. You're a supervisor, then you're a manager, then you're a director. Then it doesn't have to be in that old fashioned way to some degree. It can be like, okay, you're now going to be in charge of this team. You're going to be in charge of this. And you give them opportunities for growth within that so they can see their career and themselves being challenged and growing. Giving them training gives them that same idea of like, you are moving, you are growing here. And personal growth is very important to both millennials and Gen Zs. And we're seeing a lot of growth in this idea of leadership development because people want to keep growing in this way. So how do you give them opportunities for that in the first 2 years so that they can tell their friends who are posting constantly and maybe working remotely, hybrid, in the office, having all these opportunities, that they feel that they're not falling behind because they're not getting opportunities for growth. We're in a new world of work and we have to shift too. Because if you can't keep them those first 2 years, you can't grow a bench at all anyway. So you've got to figure that out.
Christine, a lot of this is also connected to, it has to come, the culture has to come from the top, because I think I'm less likely that you increase your risk. So it's always risk management, you increase the potential, put it this way, you increase the potential for your performance of your team to drop when you are giving people new tasks that they're unfamiliar with. Your performance goes that J curve, your performance drops for a little bit before it goes up as they're in that learning curve. And if you're always so performance oriented with your boss, it's like these expectations on your performance, you can't fail. There's a fear factor in there. That's when people are like, I'm not going to have this person do this because it has to be done right. So I have to do it myself. That's where that concept comes from, because it's rooted in this fear of your quality dropping at all, because that's a reflection of your own performance, is that if your team's performance drops at all. And if you're bringing someone new on or you're giving someone new tasks, they're going to do it at first less well than you can. It's built in. You have to allow it. It has to be in the company culture to allow for people to suck for a little bit while they get on their feet, assuming there's going to be hopefully a quick learning curve. But if I don't allow that my direct reports can have a drop in performance for a little bit while their team gets up, they're always going to be just doing everything themselves, because I can speak like definitely my team, like they're super competent at the things that they do. And they don't want to be represented as not that. It's a pride thing, but they have to be able to, for a little bit, just go like, yeah, we're going to suck for a bit because my team's learning some new stuff.
Well, it wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't disagree with you on something. So I'm very excited to tell you that most of what you said, I agree with, but except for the statement that it has to start at the top. While in a perfect utopia, it starts at the top, but it doesn't, because hopefully it can. Okay, senior leaders out there. However, I think what you said can happen on any level if you, who are daring greatness, are going and telling your boss, this is what I'm doing, and this is the chance it's going to happen. And then you're managing up as well, because I'm sorry, you can't wait for the upper leadership to value growing a bench. Be good at growing this bench, because honestly, if you work in an organization that doesn't believe in this and you leave, one of the things you can talk about at your new place is how you grew that bench. You know what I mean? So like, that's the reality. I'd love to
I wish I could argue with you. You got me ready for a fight, and I'm like, no, she's right. Yeah. It does not have to come from the top. Everybody can influence, anyone. but it's really helpful if it comes from the top.
That's
but you
true.
Can also get ahead of it by just telling your boss.
Yeah. Communicating, right?
I'm doing this. So you might see a change in performance for a little bit of time while we get on our feet. And then a month out is when we'll be like, that's my goal for when we'll be back to. Yeah.
Well, Tom, thank you. We're over our time, but I want to thank you for coming. It's always fun to talk to you. And I really wish, this is such an important topic for everybody, for your own growth, for your own career, for your company's longevity and vitality. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Christine. It's an honor. It's a joy.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And thank you for being so good at doing this with our team. I probably don't tell you that enough. So thank you. Bye. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I'd like to give a special shout out to our podcast producer, Richard Francisco. Check out our notes for any details. And if you get anything out of this, please follow us. And if you enjoy it, please take a moment to rate us or write a comment. It will mean the world to us. We'd love to hear from you. And if you just can't get enough, follow me on TikTok and check out tlpnyc.com/podcast for more information.